Well, hello, one and all. This is RPG with DBJ. We are on our quest to world build with character classes from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Not that it specifically has to be 5th edition, but I'm using that list. And, primarily this channel is about world building and about just using various techniques for RPGs. And so, thank you for joining me today or listening in or catching up later about world building. And today's episode is about using the Ranger. Now, before we delve into that, there are quite a few comments from the previous videos about monks and paladins. Really cool insights on these things, I have to say. Great interaction, I believe. For example, Joseph Keenan mentions that about oaths, because we've really talked more about oaths than specifically paladins, and talked about in real life there are sects that are excluded from military duties and the like because of their oaths. Quakers and Amish come to mind. That's from Joseph Keenan, and he says, of course, there is a public view and private view of oaths as well. Some people who plainly don't give a crap about reputation. Others will do what they can to make sure they have a good name in terms of taking an oath of a particular service. Lawyers and doctors really come to mind in our modern life. It's the typical show where you have the doctor has to prevent the criminal from dying or whatever, and they've taken an oath to save lives, and lawyers who may know some deep secrets about a criminal, and the lawyer's like, no, I'm supposed to serve my client and I'm not allowed to tell you about someone's criminal background, or the lawyer that always demands, you've got to tell me the truth for me to defend you. I don't have to tell other people because I am your lawyer. I am your, I give you service, that kind of thing. Excuse me. Wow. Zevron08 says, in my mind, I can imagine a sort of military station or academy that trains people like the Mass Effect Justicars. And while I can see that, it's, I like the idea of societies that demand of people their oaths. I think it's fun to have the friction of people taking their oaths seriously to having things that complicate their lives because they've taken these oaths. Because he even says, to quote Samara, if I must kill a man because he has done wrong, do I really wish to know that he is a devoted father? And finding out that information before or after, say, taking an oath of vengeance or something can really, I think is far better for world building and role playing than it would be for, players who just run around without having any conflict, emotionally or otherwise. What else? There's here in during the monk, they were just talking about Zevron08, which I kind of agree with this, says something I find out about D&D is people view the monk as immersion breaking in a world with magic spells, people casting divine miracles directly from the gods, and undead being a thing. All the monsters that are from different regions or cultures, some that are even Asian, but a guy who practices martial arts, that's way too much. Not the red dragon or flump. The mimics or cloakers, these are fine. Yeah, I know everyone's got their little hang up, like, it's it's the studded leather armor argument. It's like, studded leather armor didn't exist, it breaks immersion. And I'm just like, wait a minute, there's like elves and like spells that let you teleport and stuff. That's not a problem, but whatever. All right, Rangers. Now, when it comes to Rangers, and let me just reinforce the rules that we're using here in the world creation. We are creating a setting where one class is the dominant force that has shaped society. They may or may not be the largest population, but the things that they have done, their specialties, has shaped society to such a point that most people and their behaviors are are focused around this particular class for one reason or another. Now, if we take a look at some of the class features of a ranger, I like to take a look at the mechanical portions of it and then start to shape down what a society would be like. So, of course, the typical thing about rangers is that they are like survivors, right? They are we consider them the atypical woodland individual, the with the backpack and a bow and arrow or a crossbow and using two weapons in each hand and surviving in the wilderness and such. So in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, they describe this as such. They have a favored enemy trait, which allows them to choose a favorite enemy. And of course, they have all of the enemy types, aberrants, beasts, celestials, constructs, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, giants, monstrosities, oozes, which I think is kind of weird and fun, plants, or undead. And then alternatively, you can select 2 races of humanoids, such as gnolls and goblins, as favorite enemies. And of course, as they gain levels, their favorite enemy, they can choose another favorite enemy. And they even suggested as you gain levels, your choices should reflect the types of monsters you have encountered on your adventure. They also gain like wisdom, survival checks to track their enemies, and they can learn a language from their enemy if it's spoken by them. And intelligence, they have advantage on intelligence checks to recall information about them. Excuse me. So basically, there's some kind of enemy that they have studied, and they know how to fight them, track them, speak with them if they have a spoken language and such. Now, I think sometimes we tend to assume that a favorite enemy specifically is an enemy that they know how to kill, and that's all they do. It's like, oh, there's my favorite enemy, I better kill it. But it could be rationalized as a favorite enemy could just be an adversary, and that they may also have a need to have diplomatic relations with them, as well as the ability to kill them too, right? So if some of these favorite enemies break a treaty or are a threat to society, they can kill them. But also, it may be that the Rangers are the bulwark, they're the vanguard against this enemy, especially if there is an intelligent enemy, and then parlay with them when they can, and then and then do battle when they can't. And then the other major aspect of Rangers are that they are natural explorers, and this is pretty self-explanatory, right? They can choose a favorite terrain, such as like Arctic coast, desert, forest, grassland, mountain, swamp, or the Underdark. And then whenever they make intelligence or wisdom checks related to their favorite terrain, their proficiency bonus is doubled if they have a skill in it. And so while traveling for an hour, they have a bunch of other talents, like difficult terrain doesn't slow them. Your group can't become lost. When you're engaged in another activity, you're still alert to danger. If you travel alone, you can move stealthily at a normal pace. When you forage, you find twice as much food. And while tracking other creatures, you can also learn their exact number, their size, and how long ago they passed through the area. And then, of course, they gain extra favorite terrains at 6th and 10th levels as they gain more skills. And I'm sure as above with their favorite enemy, it should reflect where they've been and what they've done. And we do have let's see, we got someone in the chat. Prue, what's going on there? Prue says Rangers would be cool in a post-apocalyptic setting. I think I absolutely positively, you're already ahead of me, absolutely positively agree with you, right? In a post-apocalypse, it's like the Rangers that survive, they're the ones that know how to forage, they know how to dodge the enemy. Zombie apocalypse, A Quiet Place, Bird Box, right? These are movies where you have some sort of creature, some kind of like enemy outside, and they know how to handle it. The Walking Dead. Hey, we can hide as the Walking Dead if we cover ourselves with the dead intestines and the blood, of other creatures or something. Or Quiet Place, if we stay quiet and we take off our shoes and don't use plates, we eat off of lettuce, we can survive. It's it's having the knowledge of the enemy and then having the skills to survive and move around. And in a post-apocalypse, resources are usually very scarce or very hard to come by, and it requires you moving from place to place, which absolutely positively means that rangers are like your top of the food chain skill set, right? Um, Prue says, in fifth edition, I do feel they get numbed down by the outsider background, which steals some of the areas where Rangers usually has spotlight. On a personal note, like me being the self-appointed third pillar-ist, right? I feel like the environment and using the idea that the environment itself is a fully developed third pillar in gaming has been atrophied. And so the ranger has really become a monster hunter rather than a survivalist, simply because like the outsider background easily allows other characters to survive. And then there are other skill sets where, because survival isn't really a thing in fifth edition, foraging for food isn't tough because you have spells that allow you to get food. Getting lost isn't an issue. The weather is underutilized. Exhaustion isn't really a thing in fifth edition. You know, a short rest pretty much wipes away most conditions, and a long rest makes it pretty much null and void. That traveling for long distances isn't really a thing in fifth edition. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a thing in other game systems or other editions of the game, where that you can't, that there aren't people out there who've modified their own game settings. Isklof comes to mind. Ravaged Land of Cryfoth. These are settings designed by people that I associate with. Plug. Yeah, those settings. A lot of people are into like the survivalist style settings. So yeah, so thanks, Prue. So yeah, there are many people who have modified their game settings, and I'm sure there are players who balk at the idea, like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to starve, or I have to actually find shelter. Stupid, But maybe that's endemic of giving people what they want rather than what they need. Yeah, okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. All right, so let's get back to Rangers. So, lastly, Rangers do have Ranger archetypes, and for example, there's a list of archetypes, and I'm not going to go through what they can do, but you get the idea, right? Ranger archetypes are like Beastmaster, Gloomstalker, Horizon Walker, the Hunter, the Monster Slayer, and Primeval Guardian. Of course, there are third-party ones that are created as well, but the Ranger tends to be primarily a loner type, or at least a very temporary with the group type of class, right? It's it's the hire the guide, or the ranger that rolls his eyes because they have to save the people who are unskilled in their abilities. The hermit ranger who lives out in the wild. There was an old TV show called Grizzly Adams. I used to love that thing. And Grizzly Adams lived with a bear, kind of, and he had a symbiotic relationship with the bear. And he was always this grizzled old man that had a big beard, and he could survive by himself in the wilderness. And of course, problems would ensue around his community, and he'd come off. He lived in Montana or North Dakota or something like that. And of course, he'd have to save people, and the bear would come and help him out, or he would have to save the bear. He had a thumbtack in his paw or something. But anyway, Rangers tend to fall into another thing that Rangers fall into a group in is having pets or familiars. The idea of having pets is really underutilized a lot of times in games. Familiars are a thing, right? It's, familiars, you have like a telepathic link with them. Sometimes familiars are fantastical in nature, whether they're like small pseudo dragons or flying snakes, or I don't know, a living vine or something, giant spider or scorpion or something. But the idea of rangers having a pet, dog, falcon, um, being mounted combat and mounted adventuring is underdeveloped as well. Um, I can't believe you remember that show, Grizzly Adams. Yeah, I'm an old dude, man. I remember those shows, and there were plenty of shows similar to it. I know there was one. Oh, I'll go down a rabbit hole, but those shows where the main character had like um, had one or more animals they they could rely on to save them, I think is a thing. So mentioned by in the community, I'm stealing this from the community. I got to give credit to where credit is due. I believe is Zevron mentions this. Yeah, Zevron mentions for the Ranger episode, I can see the elven cities in Lord of the Rings as an example. Remote cities hidden by nature, warriors that protect nature, but also serve to defend civilization from nature. Their martial prowess coming from the need to be a hunter, gatherer society, and druids may be sages or advisors, but the primary force is rangers. I have to agree with that. Like the idea of the woodland enclave, like tucked away in nature, hidden where regular people in society can't find them, and rangers would absolutely, positively be a primary force, especially if they have to go out. I also think that rangers are needed if an enemy is out there and that enemy is more than just a myth, a fantasy, a minor nuisance. I think rangers, just because of their need to be trained to defeat something, not just to be hunters, but to be that vanguard against some other greater greater enemy or threat, like the undead, fighting off swarms of undead, or maybe there's some kind of beast or aberrants out in the wild that they have to defend their community from. I absolutely believe wholeheartedly that in a setting where rangers are primary, that their skill set has to be primary. So there would be both a need to defend their community as well as explore outwards, maybe to find out more information to gather supplies and to feed people. Yeah, Prue says I like the Rangers as a sort of special ops type. I absolutely agree with you on that one, right? The modern day version of the special ops, where you have the small group, small squad, small cadre of like highly trained individuals that can communicate with each other using their own specialized type of sign language, able to mark the environment with chalk or carvings in trees or things of that nature, able to communicate using flashes of light or smoke signals, and having a synergistic way of combat, without even needing to use many words. They are able to surround an enemy using hand signals. One person takes up like a sniper position from like a long ranged effect where the others may lead enemies into things. And this is where I need to bring out my soapbox again. This is where the ranger using the environment in a setting for rangers, I think really would help. So instead of just calling it forests, I think having thunderstorms and mudslides and deep chasms and, thick woods and different types of trees, thick trees with lots of branches, or tall trees where they're just long, tall, monolithic things, diseased areas, forest fires, fog. I think rangers could really shine in those environments, and have them use and abuse it to go after maybe there's beasts that ravage the wasteland and are killing off their group. So talking about carving out a setting, I also believe it would be what a unique setting for rangers would be to have some kind of setting where humanity small or large population had to leave their normal habitat and move to another realm, whether it's from something mundane like volcanic eruption, famine, disease, um, criminal persecution, and everyone had to pack up in ships or caravans or what have you, and then move to another land and then settle there. And it could be a small group, a couple of hundred, and maybe the PCs are like their defenders. It could be thousands or tens of thousands, and the PCs are part of a governmental group that has to settle them in this new land, and then dealing with the adversaries that live in this other land. And that other land could be other humanoids. It could be a land where in the past maybe they had been enemies of this new nation, and now this nation has to beseech this new world, a wild world, and basically ask for mercy in the orc lands or the goblinoid lands. Prue says they go well with druids, but there's also some nice seeds for conflict there if we make a setting that is shaped primarily after rangers. Yeah, because rangers tend to be not to be survivalist, so they respect nature, but they need to use nature. So the killing of deer and animals to survive, the finding of streams to fish in, the skinning of animals for their fur is very much a ranger thing, whereas we don't necessarily associate that with druids. We more or less think of druids as protecting all life, whereas rangers are like the conservationists. They wouldn't slaughter a herd of tens of thousands of buffalo, but they would definitely kill one to feed their group. And even if a ranger is religious, either giving honor to elder gods or nature, they may give thanks for slaying that one buffalo, but they would never kill off all of them. You know what I mean? Prue says, or a setting where plate tectonics and weather is very active, so no one is able to settle for too long at a time. And that could be a thing, right? There may be these combining the idea of like these ancient elven enclaves. This could be an excuse to be racially segregated in a way. I will explain. Elven enclaves, because they're so old and ancient, may have found some of the very few safe places to live. Dwarven communities may have found underworld places to go, et cetera, right? The halfling, we like to think of halflings living in these, pristine glens or something, but maybe plate tectonics, like you said, weather, volcanoes, the magical experiments gone wrong that have created chaos storms or something, may have pushed some of these racially and culturally segregated communities out into the wild. And so now they have to venture out to gain supplies. And it could be that, even when you find a place of safety, that a ranger community may only have like one or very few specific resources, and they're forced to trade with others to gain other resources. So for example, one community may have fruits that supply citric acids and vitamin C or something, whereas another community may have milks and cheeses, and yet another community has abundant fishing, in their location. And so it may be necessary to travel outwards, deal with people diplomatically, even enemies, the goblinoid hordes that, they need weapons, they need iron weapons, and yet at the same time they have access to I don't know, fruits and vegetables or something, or they may even have one or more individuals that are skilled in things like blacksmithing, veterinary skills, medicine, even other kinds of education like reading and writing. And so in this post-apocalyptic world where the weather has gone wrong, or some kind of magical thing has happened, or maybe even beasts from another world, portals have opened up and they've been released into this world, and ley lines have crossed or something, or it could be an astrological event where the red comet, stealing this from Game of Thrones, the red comet has crossed the sky, and winter is descending upon the land, and and now the sun doesn't rise as high, the snows come thick, and the cold is freezing, ever increasing year by year, and that could be a thing. Scott Poe says, Prue says, like the Broken Earth trilogy by J.K. Jennison, an inspiration for this. The world is like in a perpetual state of post-apocalypse because people have to keep rebuilding, and again, an excuse to delve into ancient ruins, right? The Rangers have to scout out before the community moves. They find ancient ruins, they go in, they find supplies, they find other survivors. Now maybe those survivors are included in their group, and there's the added conflict of dealing with the strangers that are trying to blend into your group. That's always a post-apocalypse thing, right? Post-apocalypse settings have primarily two natures. It's dealing with the outer enemy, whether it's the undead, whether it's beasts, whether it's the weather, and then there's the inner enemy. It's the close confines of a limited number of individuals all trying to survive. And of course, you have to have those a-holes that are like, it's all about me, it's just me. I'm going to eat all the candy bars, or I'm going to lock the doors when the good guys are outside, confronted with the enemy. It's that kind of thing. Scott Poe says in Alaska, they drink a pine needle beer to get their vitamin C. Total side detail that flew to my brain. But, you can add those things in, right? It's in a post-apocalypse, we need to eat, oranges and bananas for that potassium and vitamin C, right? And instead of magic items and experience points fighting dragons, finding a specific cache of foods and nutrients may be the reward in this world. And I know that doesn't sound very exciting to some people, but for those who love a survivalist post-apocalypse setting, even just finding safety for 3 days may be in and of itself a reward for a long trek across the Black Desert after nuclear war, or its equivalent in a medieval setting, if that's the type of setting you're using. Scott Prue says this also means that each community is very stingy with who they allow to join or stay. You have to contribute in a very real, practical way, or you're out. She goes on to say childbearing abilities turn out to be even more crucial than usual because mortality is so high. And that just the idea of finding out maybe one or more members of your group are pregnant and keeping them alive, and in a world where maybe children are extremely valuable, women are extremely valuable, and that's even a further conflict, right? The conflict of equality amongst genders, but women have to be protected against the harsh realities and the men going out. And, there would be a lot of women who don't want to take that back seat, as well as an open community changing their rules concerning those kind of things would be kind of cool to deal with as well. Scott Poe says Ranger midwives cross through harsh territory to help deliver those children. That's sweet. I like that. Those hobgoblins or those bugbears that have the children, that would be a real good twist. Instead of the PCs killing off the pregnant goblinoids and the kids, maybe they're there to ensure that they live in this harsh world, and that could make them allies, or at least not enemies any longer. And it's the triangle of conflict, right? Maybe there's, I don't know, fiendish beasts out in the wild, or I don't know, some kind of evil portal has been opened up to the abyss or the nine hells, and now it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Could be a situation in a setting, in addition to trying to beseech some of these enclaves that have been living for a long time, like this elven enclave that's lived for a long time, but they really don't like strangers because of the chaos that they throw into their group. Or maybe the elves want the humans to breed with them to extend their group out there. So you might have that, may be where half elves come from, and there might be some governmental conflict with that, as like the elders or the chancellors or the counselors that rule this community maybe want to vote against it or something. So that's again internal conflicts versus external conflicts. Prue says in Arctic climates, eating seaweed from the intestines of sea animals to get certain nutrition is also a thing, and that is another dichotomy as well. The idea of taking care of animals to support your community. You know, it's the watching the herd, taking care of pigs or cattle or chickens, camels. Not only would they be riding beasts, but they may also serve other nutritional elements, eating the creatures because they digest certain things a particular way, following a herd to keep your community alive. Maybe the animals are hypersensitive to finding safety or dodging the weather or finding clean water. Maybe something in the animals keeps your group from being diseased because you're getting some kind of nutrients or chemical or enzyme from them that keeps disease at bay, and keeping enemies from stealing your chickens and stealing your cows may be a thing as well. The enemy, and what a great way to have motivation for your enemies. It's not just they hate you, they want to kill you, you hate them, you want to kill them. It could just be a matter of resources. You have 13 cattle and they just want to steal 2 of them to feed their group. But if their group is fed, they're just going to go on more raids to kill other people. Prue agrees with Scott that anyone able to help with health and childbirth and also able to travel through that wilderness would be beyond valuable. Although the danger would be being kidnapped. As rangers, you go there to help with their childbirth, to help with their hospice, if people are dying, to help with alleviating poison and disease, but then they don't want to let you go. And you're trying to, explain to them that, like, you don't need to kidnap us. We're here willingly. And how to deal with that situation. And especially if you have, in a post-apocalypse where people are trying to survive, whether it's like in swamps or in the mountains or in Arctic or blazing desert, or more fantastical things like I mentioned before, like a black desert of wind and glass, or the burning forest of white trees, made from the bones of the dead or something like that you could yeah, proves this, like in Firefly, we got ourselves a doctor. Those people will be very, very valuable. Even literacy might be a thing that is a valuable skill, especially if society has collapsed and you have libraries and wizards' towers that are abandoned, and these books can lead people to places with great treasure, great resources. Hell, there might even be treasure chests full of gold that people are like brush aside and ignore because of the potatoes that are growing, in the fields or something, because gold is pretty much worthless. You might have to have a barter system. Barter systems can be kind of complicated in role-playing games, just simply because you never know the value of something. The 3 chicken rule sometimes doesn't apply, but yeah, definitely a barter system. And in a fantastical setting, you can make other things far more valuable. Um, I don't know, axe beak eggs, because they make great mounts, or um, protecting the a mountain area of giant eagles or pegasi or something, and another group wants to steal them for themselves, but if you can raise them, they become great mounts or what have you. Sorry it took me so long to get here. I was kidnapped by hobgoblins to deliver a baby, then a manticore, then some blink dogs. Classic midwife tales. I love that. And that really reshapes the favored enemy trope of the, hey, I hate giants, so I just want to slay giants, as opposed to needing like 3 rangers to get that giant baby, that giant delivering the baby, because maybe the babies come out as like 60 to 80 pound babies, from the fire giants, you know what I mean? Yeah. Dead, Dead Man's Storyteller says, delivering manticores is real hardcore. Oh yeah, those spikes, man. You better beware. And that, I think, I have a feeling like a setting where delivering, it's strange that delivering babies sounds like a cool thing, but that would be awesome. And although depressing, it's you really might need to use like the X card kind of thing, or fade to black, because especially if one or more people in the group is going through something that like touches upon them. But you know the reward of giving life versus taking life would really change the dynamic in a post-apocalyptic setting. I really like that. Wow, yeah, Prue says, also imagine the beast friend of a the best friend of Beastmaster Ranger would have access to playing midwife in such a setting. I'm in. Yeah, it's Beastmasters would absolutely fit in. What are some of those other tropes? I know there's like Horizon Walker. It's kind of like the version of the Ranger that goes through different realms. The Glooms. Let's see. The Beastmaster, of course, is part and parcel having friends of beasts, making friends with them, hunting beasts, having bestial familiars. The Gloomstalker is like the underdark version of the Ranger, which doesn't mean that it doesn't apply in this situation. The Horizon Walker would work as an archetype if this post-apocalypse is one in which other planes of existence or micro realms come into this world. So maybe there's like portals where elemental forces have gone wild. So the elemental plane of air and fire and water and ice and mud and dust and steam come into this world and is wreaking havoc. It's out of balance, and the Rangers are able to survive. And so some of these otherworldly creatures may not know that these Rangers are there to help them if they can, because they are part of nature, where as well as the Rangers that can fight off like elementals. And you could really mix in Rangers of different favored enemies. So maybe some of them are like one Ranger might be fight against some kind of like humanoid, goblinoid or something, like gnolls or troglodytes. And then another Ranger is against elementals. And then you have a third Ranger that can fight the undead. And all of these things are in this post-apocalypse that are way out of control, and trying to bring balance, or at least live in a world where there is no balance, could be a thing. And Rangers would be amazing at helping refugees too. Yeah, Prue mentions that there could be refugees coming from another place. Ooh, yeah, or as traffickers. That's where you get the conflict. The slave traffickers, whether it's used for labor or sex trafficking or something, they could be enemies, or there could be enemies out in the world. trafficking of children is a thing. And so if you really want to get deep, that could be a thing in this new world, because those people bolster other refugee groups. And as I mentioned before, it could be like Game of Thrones. There was Volantis, where the 14 volcanoes erupted and forced the Targaryen family to flee from their realm and come into this, Estos and Westeros and such. So you could have the last remnants of civilization flee to this realm, either in caravans or in boats or something. And little by little, more and more refugees are being found or coming to this world, and figuring out how to include them or help them survive or dodge them. The larger the ranger community, the harder it is to protect them, but the greater your resource access to, because I've mentioned this in another setting as well with the druids and such. So it could be that maybe you do make up like a statistic where that you're always trying to keep it in balance. So the statistic could be the more stable your group is and the higher the population, you have greater access to needed skills and resources, but they're also harder to protect. Whereas if it goes in the other direction, your group is smaller, but they're more mobile, they're more stealthy, but you don't have a greater, wider range of needed skills, whether it's needed labor or educational skills, intellectual skills for survival, as well as the fact that the minute one or more people maybe gets injured through poison or maybe disease spreads through your group, if you have a smaller population, it's easier for them to spread. Whereas if you have a larger population, you could segment them out and such. And that might be difficult too, right? If one or more people become sick, do you kill them? Do you exile them? Do you try to find cures for them? Maybe there's the other class, because we got to bring up the other class types, right? Maybe clerics and druids and these other classes are so small in number that they are very rare. So maybe a cleric that can cure disease is a rarity, and you have to find this individual to help your group out. And maybe the cleric could just be the equivalent of a doctor, or that cleric could be quite religious and expect some kind of tribute, so you have to give them something. Or maybe the cleric is able to survive in a small commune or conclave because of people bringing them fruits and vegetables and bread and meats and furs and needed supplies, maybe adequate weapons. You could also add in this society that iron and steel might be quite rare. So bone and bronze and stone weapons and wooden weapons might be far more prolific, where you have a wooden spear tipped with an obsidian head, or obsidian arrowheads and things of that nature, using the bone from slain creatures as clubs and sharpening them or something. But these other character classes might be very rare. The paladins, the clerics, especially the wizards, might be rare. And again, we could have conflict where maybe they've come from a very, I'll say, higher tech society, even if it's medieval, and they've come to this wild world. So you have like the wizard clutching to them the few books that are left after the cataclysm, leaving their old world. If it hasn't been a cataclysm and people have been chased away due to persecution for any number of reasons, religious, cultural, dictatorships are an overly a dictatorship is taken hold, and people are fleeing, to another place to start their new lives, and maybe agents from the old world are coming to the new world, and the PCs are fighting them off. And it could be that they bring with them constructs and firearms or something, or even just mages. They bring with them um, people with books and learning, and the Rangers are like protecting the communities against these other invaders, and they may have a cultural relationship to them. Prue says some of the more specialized classes might have been almost wiped out by targeted genocide by the main villain, and that's a thing, right? Religious persecution, maybe this new regime basically tried to purge out the paladins that were used to defend the land, and maybe more of the criminals have taken over, and those criminals have become have morphed into the Rangers in this world. They've become the survivalist, whereas in the past maybe people just exiled these criminals out into the wild, and now those individuals have to come to terms with the fact that they're the heroes in this new wild world, in the jungles or swamps or mountains or like vast plains of the new world. This setting could even be one in which it lends itself to piracy and the whole sailing ship pirate setting, where the PCs have one or more sailing ships, or maybe they've settled on an island and they have to go out into the wider world on ships to gather supplies and deal with enemies and allies alike. Prue says certain types of magic might be unstable or offline for various reasons, both a fun thing for world building, but also a greater, larger goal for a campaign to find a reason and turn that back. You could limit or highly restrict certain types of magic unless you're able to find those things. So maybe magic itself is typical 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons magic in the old world, but when they've what's going on here, dogs, bollocks. So maybe magic is what we find in a book. It's just regular 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons magic in the old world, but in this new world, it's very difficult. Maybe it requires certain like herbs and material components, or it's very slow, or it causes lots of exhaustion. Maybe it's far more chaotic, and maybe solving it or finding the specific resources so that magic could spread. And maybe that's why the old world that might have had a higher level of technology could not expand, because they used silly you're so silly here, Prue. Good to have you. DBJ is the bee's knees. Hey, you be careful of those knees of those bees. I don't know what that's about. You guys are cool. All right, listen. Rangers, really awesome. I think we could come up with, I really didn't talk about the types of adversaries they could have. I mean, you have your favorite enemies like aberrants and oozes and undead and such. Maybe there were walled cities in the old world, and for some reason those walled cities came down, or the population has grown so large that people get kicked out, and so the PCs are the Rangers protecting the small community that has been exiled from the larger community. And so now that they have to exist on the outside world, maybe whatever it is that has been attacking the walls, from great beasts or monstrosities like the Tarrasque, like dinosaurs or those kind of things, could exist in this world. And so they have to survive against them, and kind of, like I said, become the vanguard this world. Hey, kitty. Hi there. Sorry, just before I go, I got to pick up the kitty. Yeah. What's here? Yeah. She's my baby. She's deaf, unfortunately. She's, I don't know, 19 years old by now, I think. Yeah, but hey, say Tia. Yeah. Good to see you. She just wanted some head rubbies and stuff. But anyway, guys, world building with Rangers. Yeah, Kitty Cam. Yeah. Sorry, Prue. Say hello. She doesn't want to be in my lap. She just wants to be pet. Yeah, purring real loud. Ooh, is that mange? All right. You can play D&D later on. Uh, all right. Back to the back to the world building. Rangers, yeah. Cats make good allies as well. Yeah. Kitties are. This cat is camera shy. The other, my other two are wild. So anyway, Rangers also. Lastly, I would say socially, we could play with the social dynamic of how important they are, because in a way, what we're thinking of is we're dealing with basically a group of people trying to survive, and that group could be 10 people, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and the jealousies that can come up with the fact that, is this a democratic group? Is this group led by old school nobles and led by noble blood? Is this a merit society? And what does merit account for, right? If you're a great hunter, you may be given great respect. But if you're a designer who's created an aqueduct or something, or some way to water fields, and then you sit back and put your feet up and put your hands behind your head, are you lazy just because you're a brilliant person? Would more respect be given to the unwashed, the people, the blue collar workers, the ones that work with their hands versus the intellectuals? That kind of conflict might come up socially in a group in which the Rangers are more or less trying to protect them all. And of course, there's the added headbutting of like, okay, we need to stop arguing because we all need to work together to survive. And then lastly, there's of course my favorite, the third pillar, where you could have these conflicts, but then be put in a position where each person has to help the other. So let's say there's like a sandstorm or a blizzard rolls in and it traps everyone together. Or maybe all the groups get split apart. So like half of a group is trapped with like a hobgoblin entourage, and then another group is trapped with some gnolls, and the blizzard has rolled in and it's very hard to navigate in the blinding storms, and you don't know what's out there. And so that could be a thing as well, where everyone's looking at each other with murder in their eyes, but everyone knows that we have to camp down because it's going to be hours before the storm passes, or it might be months before the winter breaks and the spring comes in. Let's see. Scott Poe. Scott Poe says, "Let your Rangers come up with unusual flora or fauna in the area to encounter and help flesh out your setting." I absolutely agree with that, especially if you want to have something really alien. Have everyone come up with like unique plants or animals that exist, whether they glow, the way they look, the way they hunt, some of their special abilities. You could actually change some creatures. So, for example, demons and devils, outer world fiends don't need to come from those places. They could actually be natural creatures if you take away their intelligence, or they may exist in this world as warlords and such, and they may not come from another world. They may just exist as natural beings in this world. And Bruce says, and if you're a jerk to be around, you better be able to bring something extremely worthwhile to the table in a small Bible said, no, yeah. I'm all about the neutral pillar. Yes. But yeah, it's like, there could be, how often would it happen where the PCs like come upon some NPCs in their group that just causing problems, and they either exile them, they may execute them. they could punish them in other ways. Maybe this is the first time they actually have to build a prison or a cage, you know, for to house prisoners, and this may change the dynamic in the group. For example, um, the PCs imprison a noble who's just arrogant and doesn't know what they're doing, but those loyal to the crown might find that offensive. You know, there may be last remnants of religious orders where the religion isn't as important as what's needed for survival, but the people that are part of this old religious order might be holding on with clawed fingers to their beliefs and such. Um, uh, yeah, Scott posted, forest demon spurs, dig here, tasty truffles. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how tasty like man-eating plants would be, but that would be kind of that would be kind of interesting. Yeah, Dogs Bollock says, I'm just starting to learn D&D, so I don't want to bog anyone down. My suggestion would be to I agree with Prue joining like the absolute tabletop group. There's also the tabletop one-shot group as well to join in. Just poke your head in, join in some groups, be open and honest about your skill level. Just say, hey, I'm new, I'm starting, I'd love for someone to help me out. And especially when it comes to using like the technology we use. Some people are, yes, I know you're in the chat and such, but some people are a little gun shy about using cameras and getting online using Hangouts or Skype or any number of things like Roll20. Certain groups use some of them, certain groups use all of them. There's D&D Beyond, Fantasy Grounds College. Hell yeah, Fantasy Grounds College will help you learn Fantasy Grounds and pull you into a group. So but I would absolutely positively just reach out. There will always be people out there who's like, will just raise their arms up and embrace you and say, hey, listen, if all you need is help, sure, come here. Or hey, if you're just looking for a group or a one-shot game or something, and then you know what, don't get your feelings hurt. Each of us are different in our gaming styles. Some are good for others, and so if your gaming style or someone's gaming style doesn't mesh with yours, not a big deal. Just find someone else where they can point you to someplace else. And lastly, we tend to, most of us are busy. Like for me, I get up at 5:30 in the morning to get ready for because I'm Eastern Standard Time, and to do these live broadcasts. So this fits in well with my schedule, but it's very difficult for me to do things after work because I don't know when I'm getting off of work. Every day I go to work, I don't have a specific schedule when it ends. So people have different schedules, and sometimes scheduling problems are an issue, not necessarily that they don't want to play with you. It's like, yeah, we can't. So some of the best gamers out there also tend to schedule very heavy, like Erasmus Expeditions. I have an interview with them coming up February 3rd. So we had to schedule out that far in advance so that I can appear on his channel, Jeremy Lilly's channel. Of course, we're going to talk about the third pillar of gaming, exploration. Got to do that. But that being said, schedules are really tight with people, so you just got to be open to that. Yeah. So anyway, guys, we've hit the hour mark. Thank you for joining me for world building with Rangers and world building with classes in general. We will finish out the whole series. We still have sorcerers and wizards. We still have everybody there. So yeah, Dogs Bollock says I work third shift. So by the way, people from around the world don't work third shifts because their shifts are different. So it's 6 a.m. my time. If you guys put into the chat your time zone, what it is your time is, Dogs Bullocks could figure out that, whoa, wait a minute, people game in different time zones. And so therefore it might be appropriate for you to game with people in Germany or Thailand or Australia or Hawaii or Alaska or things like that. Right. See, Prue says it's noon here. It is see 5 a.m. in Arizona. Like I said, it's 6 a.m. 6 a.m. in Ohio. Damn. So you, sometimes if you work an odd shift, you're getting off at 2 in the morning where you live. It might be noon someplace else around the world. So that's a thing to look out for too. If you have a odd thing, you may just game with people from around the world, which is sweet, right? We're all part of the gaming community. So the fact that Scott Poe is friggin' awake, I just don't get it. I don't just getting off work, man. That's crazy. But I guess I'm crazy too. So, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow is what's tomorrow after Rangers? I don't know. But we'll figure it out. Yeah. Oh, Rogues. Rogues are tomorrow. Easy. I guess you could say that's easy, but as always, we have to give it a little bit of a twist, make something interesting. So, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I've got to go to work, get ready for work. So I will see you tomorrow. I'm RPG with DBJ. Thanks for joining me. Check out Critical Hit Publishing on Drive Through RPG. Check out the Cinematic Environs. Guys, have a good day. I'm out.